What's up, Starcraft fans? Today we're doing the tier list for Encroaching, Madness on Missed Opportunities. Brian, let us hear the mutation.
Missed Opportunities is the map where we have to clear out Erosine geysers for Stetman's bots to harvest. Then we have to protect said bots from enemies. If we lose more than one bot on brutal difficulty, we lose the game. Void rifts spawn every 90 seconds. A Purifier Beam spawns every 10 minutes and chase you around, and Amon steals all the buildings that he destroys. Void rifts continuously produce units until destroyed.
Alright, so we have Sticksbender and Evil Ling in the call today. Sticksbender and Evil Ling, how are you guys?
Doing fantastic.
Alright, so Evil Ling, how will we rank the commanders this week?
So the commanders will be based mostly off of how they handle void rifts. Void rifts really demand that you have your early game together. So commanders with really early game pressure will definitely excel, and those who lag behind will definitely go down in the tier list. Purifier Beams, Eminent Domain. Eminent Domain has the effect on any commanders that rely on static defenses out on the field. Purifier Beams, kind of the same thing. You gotta have a mobile army, so you can have siege tanks and liberators and things like that out on the field, but you gotta be on it and moving them around.
Alright, how about you, Sticksbender?
Yeah, the other thing to worry about is just being able to get to all the void rifts later on in the game, because on this map, they like to spawn on like diagonal opposite corners, and it's a humongous map. So yeah, it'll be a lot of running around to catch those void rifts.
Absolutely. Let's begin. Abathur, where do we have him?
Abathur, I have him at A because it's void rifts, Abathur. You get your early brutalists out, and then you should be able to keep the rifts under control from that point on. And from there, it's just going to be almost playing like a regular missed opportunities game, other than keeping the void rifts under control and avoiding Purifier Beams.
How about you, Sticksbender?
I would honestly feel like Abathur should even be S tier this week because, as I mentioned, this map is really big, and the fact that Abathur just doesn't have to worry about that is a big deal. Also, the map itself is, interestingly, the map itself is relatively low pressure early on because it's a lot of low tech units. So and they all like converge into one area for you around the bot where you can set up toxic nests. So getting your brutalisks early on is relatively easy. Even if you don't get them in time for the first void rift, you could still catch up and have brutalisks. So I think that Abathur, as long as you don't use P1, you need the brutalisks. That's like the whole point here.
Eviling, are you convinced with S?
I can easily be convinced for S. My only, even Essence Hoarder, I think would be able to handle it. Because the good thing about Essence Hoarder for P1, all biomass that drops stays on the map. You do not run any chance of losing biomass. You lose an ultimate evolution or anything of that sort on the non-P1s, then that's like biomass off the map. Even P3, I think, is doable for this mutation. So that's kind of my metric. If P3 can handle it, and yeah. So yeah, I'll be easily convinced to say it's S.
Okay, so three things here. First off, I also personally had Abathur in S before restarted. Second thing is, I think Essence Hoarder is a bit of a stretch, since the Brutalisks are what allow Abathur to access the farthest reaches of the map easily. That's what makes him S, I think. And third thing is, I don't think the Limitless is good, because the whole point of using Abathur is to get something by 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And
the point wasn't that the Limitless was good. The point was that if you can beat it with the Limitless, then that shows you that Abathur is so good he can heavily handicap himself and still steamroll it.
Okay, if that was the point, then
exactly.
If that truly was the point, then all right, I'll accept that. So it's unanimous, therefore it's S. Congrats, Abathur. Alarak, where do we have him?
Alarak. So you can get your mothership sort of around when the first rift spawn, slightly later, and that is obviously going to have a very easy time killing the first two rifts and all the rifts until they start spawning in the back of the map, basically. Because as long as they're the rifts that are spawning close to your base and are stuck spawning close to your base, it's reasonable walking distance for the mothership to just walk around and say, well, well, those rifts, they don't exist anymore. Past that, your best option is probably to just have little fleets of Void Rays large enough, little destroyer fleets large enough to, fight rift spawns and go kill rifts, which is like 8 to 10 destroyers. And just basically send teams of destroyers around the map every time rifts spawn, and have the mothership sticking around the objective to make sure that in addition to popping any rifts that spawn on the objective, the mothership plus Alarak get to deal with the actual attack waves that we have to remember exist. Alarak should be relatively good here, honestly. He could, I'd say, be an A, to be honest.
How about you, Eviling?
I agree with A. That's where I have him at. His early game is very good. He can always put on the early pressure. Another thing about missive opportunities and void risks, the faster you clear the map, the better your chances are, because that gives you access to all the odd void risk spawn points. Alarak can clear quickly. So
All right.
Yep, A.
It's actually, I also had him an A. It's unanimous. Without prestige, still A?
Yes.
Really? I actually don't think so, because the mothership is what allows him to have quick access to the early voiders no matter where they spawn. If you don't have
I
prestige,
think that early on without Mothership, you're going to have a rough time popping Void Drifts, to be honest. Because the problem is that, like, without Mothership, you're instead relying on
overcharge.
to create a pylon, overcharge it, and then cancel it before it finishes. And also, you need a probe to give vision for the overcharged pylon so that it can actually see the Void Rift. And then anyone likes to target fire the probe.
And then your whole macro is shot.
Well, by the second bot set, you should have your war prisms available. So war prisms, fly them out. As long as it's not like in a really nasty place, like right behind the second bonus, I think you should be able to sneak war prisms in. It's more work, yes. Is it A? No. It would probably knock Alarak down to C, I think.
That's all I'm saying. Maybe B, maybe C, but definitely not A, I think, without the third prestige specifically. So anyway, we all agree that Alarak with prestige number 3, the Shadow of Death, is in A. Let's move on. Artanis, where do we have him?
So Artanis is, well, one of the people who definitely actually does have an easier time with the first 2 rift pairs. The problem being that then he doesn't scale into it much, honestly. You can get like Tempests out, but usually the strategy of the Tempests against Voidress, which Artanis likes to use, is the fact that he'll just end up having like random Tempests scattered all over the place, because Tempest can use Disintegrate to one-shot Voidrifts, and they're strong enough that random Voidrift trickle, if it can overpower one Tempest, it can't overpower 2 Tempests. So you just have Tempests just scattered around the map. Purifier Beam is going to make that very action intensive if you want to do that. Another note is that oftentimes Artanis likes to use P3, which you still can, but it's a little awkward because the easy way to deal with Void Drifts is you can pop one Void Drift by just dropping an Orbital Strike on it at any time with Artanis, which can be very helpful, especially if you want to like deal with early Void Drifts when you ended up with one of them spawning in an awkward spot where you didn't expect it to be.
Yeah.
And it started spawning stuff before you could actually get vision of it. That sucks when that happens. Whereas with the Space Archons, instead, the layout becomes you can clear both rifts with a single drop. You do have to pan your camera a whole lot. But if you can manage to handle the camera panning and figuring out where things are, then yeah, the Archon dudes are still very useful for that. Either way, it is also notable that Artanis is one of the people who can just drop units on rifts, because he can just summon a power field and then just say, and now there's an immortal.
Yes.
Or whatever you summon.
So
I would say, basically, I would just say the same thing I said of Mengsk, a B or C range, but he's slightly worse than Mengsk.
how about you, Eviling?
I went the other way. I have him at a firm B, but I could easily be convinced toward A, because he's able to solve his early game. And once you get past early game against Void Rifts, then things start going on the uphill swing. Eminent Domain doesn't really matter for him. His army is relatively mobile compared, he has no siege units per se, so Purifier Beam is annoying, but not a huge issue.
All right. Seems that both of you have B in your Venn diagram, so that's enough for me. I also had Artanis in B, so it's unanimous. Artanis in B. Dehaka, where do we have him?
Dehaka, so he's able to farm okay. P2, the problem with Void Rifts is anything that you get out of Void Rift doesn't generate any essence, XP, biomass. So he's kind of a little hurting on that. But with P2, that kind of doesn't really matter. I have Dehaka at A.
How about you, Sticksbender?
Yeah, I think the Hawk actually could be A. P2 is generally what I've heard recommended for Void Rifts, and at very least, even if you get a far part spawn of Rift, that's if you've been saving Glevig for those far part spawns, then you're going to find that they become a lot less scary. And either way, you can drop greater primal worms without even needing vision of the area, which means that you can just pop up and say hello to Void Rifts that spawn in awkward spots.
Say goodbye.
I believe you do need to you do need to have explored the area before you can pop up the greater primal worms there, but you don't
Ooh.
need to have active vision of it.
Doesn't Amon
So-
steal the primal worms with Eminent Domain?
Yes, that is a concern. The greater primal worms do have timed life. So also the reality is Dehaka units are big meatballs that can just kind of fight through the greater primal worms. The only concern would be that depending on who your ally is, their army might have a bit of trouble with the greater primal worms. But generally a greater primal worm with has timed life is a lot less threatening than a void rift which gives you timed life.
I also had Dehaka in A. I think it's unanimous. So yeah, no arguments here. Dehaka in A. Phoenix, where do we have him?
Keldalis. He swings his arms angrily. That is your solution to early void rifts and mid game void rifts and late game void rifts as well. You have a Keldalis who you game void rifts. Basically, what you're probably gonna want to do is even if you aren't using P2, Keldalis is very strong, but you probably will want to use P2 entirely just for the early game
Do you
effectiveness
really?
of it.
Do you
I
really
would
want
say
to use
yeah.
P2 even with Purifier Beam?
Yep, I would say so.
You just run your farm around. Have a mobile farm.
Basically, I would say the only farm I would have is just I wouldn't have a whole entire mobile shell farm. I'd just bring a couple of extra zealot and adept shells lying around, like just have them scattered around basically.
All right.
And the rest of the army, the other champions shouldn't die very often. Basically,
I
is the idea.
I was half expecting you to say just lure the beam away with a probe or something, but that also works.
Yeah, you could also do that, but yeah, no. I basically your army of the shells who aren't Keldalis should not really be dying a lot, especially if you have Phoenix suits helping it. So you don't have to worry about replacing those shells too often, and they can just basically be the slow and less mobile, stick near the objective and kill risks that spawn nearby army while you send Keldalis. And I personally like to stick my Talus with my Keldalis instead of with the other army. But basically send your Keldalis, and if you send her with him Talus to go blow up void rifts around the map, and also, if they happen to run across a wave, you just kind of A-move them through it, and as long as you have shells scattered around near where they're fighting, doesn't matter if one of them dies, they just are back 5 seconds later.
All right, so where do you have him?
So I would put Phoenix in A tier. He's got a really solid early game, and in the long run, he's able to handle multitasking relatively easily.
All right, how about you, Eviling?
I definitely also have him in A too. As Sticksbender, kind of adding on to what Sticksbender was saying, you can lure the beams, but with Void Rifts up, it's very unlikely you're gonna have the APM to handle luring and closing rifts at the same time. Just concentrate on the rifts. That's your biggest threat. P2, yeah, then just have your shells moving around, and if a shell dies to the Purifier Beam, that just adds to the Avenging Protocol to your active champions. So
That's fair.
no harm done. All his prestiges, I think, will be fine for this. P1, you get the enhanced mobility from the Arbiter suit. P2, you just go out and punch Amon in the face with Rage a lot. P3, you don't have to really worry about your shell farm and just send things speeding. Like once Keldalis and Talus die a couple times, then they just zoom to the next rift
They
without
become
much
extra
issues.
angry. So
Extra angry.
extra angry. So it's well, both of you had him in A. I had him in B, but both of you guys said A. So let's have him in A. Hot and Horner, where do we have him?
Hunt and Horner, kind of the usual. They excel against Void Risks if you can get your Strike Fighter platforms going. So the hardest part for Hound and Horner is just getting to that point. You're gonna have to send out your galleons to close the rifts with Reapers, with Hellions, Hellbats, whatever it's gonna take to get your Strike Fighter platforms going. Once that's good, then Void Rifts become almost a moot point, and the game plays almost like a normal
Regular
mission.
brutal. Yeah.
I have Hand and Horner kind of floating. I would like to put them at A, but I can definitely see that they would be B because just that early game is a little rough to get there.
What do you think, Sticksbender?
I think B makes sense because of, the rough time getting there. And also, reality is, Han and Horner, when you already now have to dedicate all your strike fighters and potentially some of your bag mines to blowing up Void Rifts, they're already one of the weaker commanders for just regular Brutal. So now they have to fight without their, most critical top are regular Brutal, which ironically would probably be harder than some of the A tier fighting with Void Rifts. It's like the power gap is there, definitely there.
All right.
So basically, they can deal with Void Rifts very effectively, but it's probably going to be B anyways.
All right, so both of you have an B. I had him an A. And earlier today, Tutu told me that he won't be able to join, but he said, and I quote, that he thinks Han and Horner is an S because there was a bug that came in with a new patch that made the Galleons invincible when the Eminent Domain Mutator is on. So that makes reaching the early rifts super not a problem because you can just fly our galleys over it, drop 2 mag mines, then it's gone, making your early game absolutely not a problem. And then later game, you can just have 1 galley at home and the other 4 on the field, not really caring that they're sitting under the Purifier Beam, spitting out forces. Of course, not always under the beam, but they just spit out force and then just run out of the beam. And when they have the carry upgrade, they can just regen when they're not being Purifier beamed. And again, the galleys themselves are invincible. That's, I think, it's a complete game changer, freeing up all of your airstrikes to just deal with Void Rifts. And he said that with the fire upgrade, you only need 2 shots, meaning you have an extra 2, and your top bars, and your mag mines for the rest of the waves and clearing. That's why Tutu had him an S.
I forgot about the plot armor galleons.
As much
bug.
as
that makes them good. Plot armor galleons are good.
But as much as I respect Tutu's opinion, doesn't that count similar to like the minor evacuation bug for Vipers?
Yes.
And thus disqualifies
The
it?
difference is
not exactly. See, here's the thing: if you were using the Han and Horner bug, where they use the exploit with like getting their Horner units to negative hit points to make them invulnerable, that would be like explicitly exploiting something.
Yes.
Here, it's if Eminent Domain is active, your assault galleons cannot die. You can't avoid this bug in any way. It is just your assault galleons cannot die, whether you want them to die or not.
Yes.
So as a result, it just has to be taken as an unintended feature because you can't avoid it.
Something like that.
Not map specific, it's mutator specific.
It's
mutator
which,
specific.
Unlike the Viper.
And it's not
the Viper bug.
I think the difference here is the bugs that we disqualify. You actively have to do them. You actively need to know about them.
You might have to look up a guide on how to exploit the bug. Here, you don't have to look up a guide. If you don't know about the bug, you'll accidentally run across the bug when, why is my galleon invincible?
So,
fair.
Are we gonna let the ghost of Tutu overturn all of us?
Honestly, because I completely forgot about that bug. Yeah, no, that makes Han and Horner great. I'm not sure about it come all the way to S tier, but like
I can see it. Honestly, I can see it
see all the way
because
to S tier, but I'm not entirely convinced. I'm not entirely convinced on S tier.
I've always loved Han and Horner against Void Rifts because no matter what time of rift spawn, even the first 2 rifts are easy for Han and Horner to handle because they have guys that just fly over any defense and just spot them with mag mines. And then as long as your macro and your build is on point, you will always have the fire upgrade and enough galley or enough airstrikes to go by 820, which is why I actually can see them being an S.
Also, Han and Horner got a big buff against Void Rifts with the addition of Prestige 1, so their mag mines could just be dropped instantly on top of the rifts.
Absolutely. It's all up to Eviling now.
Just hit rifts hard too.
Yeah, it actually prefer Helions, but I guess Reapers can also work. But it's all up to Eviling now because if it's not unanimous, it's not S. What do you think, Eviling?
For going for invincible galleons, I mean that's without a question. That's S right there. I mean, you say something's invincible. I can't. It's like to say that's not S is.
All right.
It's not only is it invincible, it's literally your barracks. So you have it really early game.
Let's have Han and Horner S.
I would say that I don't think they're S if they're not P1. If they're not P1, I probably would say they're not S.
I agree with that. I agree with that because
otherwise the DPS of your galleons will be too low that even if they are invincible, Zerglings are eating your SCVs now from the first 2 Void Rifts.
The Magmice I think are critical for getting Han and Horror to S. The P1 Magmice specifically. Karax, where do we have him?
It is Karax again. Void Rifts. He's good at that. You have the first Void Rifts are dealt with by just remember that that Void Rift spawn at 2 minutes and 20 seconds and have
Vision.
probes, make a pair of probes out giving vision at like 2 minutes and 10 seconds, so you can quickly walk over and shoot it with space lasers.
And
shoot
if
5
it
orbital strikes
spawns-
to tell a rift to stop existing.
And if it spawns behind the first camp, just delete the first camp. Then just walk straight through and kill the Void Rift. So letter.
Basically, yeah, that's your early game, and then as things go on, you're going to continue to do that. Unfortunately, you can't just litter the map in cannons, which sucks. Otherwise, normally Karax would just litter the map in cannons, orbital strike all the Void Rifts, easy S tier, done and done. He can't litter the map with cannons. Or if he can, if he does, it's because he trapped Purifier Beams. I'm not sure where to put him, to be honest, because there's an argument for A tier, because as long as you trap the Purifier Beam, he's great. There's an argument for lower than that, because if you don't trap the Purifier Beam, he's stuck using units that need a lot of numbers to scale and are not very fast moving, so they could have pain with Void Rifts. But I would say probably we can sneak him into A if need be, if like you're forced to use units. Immortals are probably your most robust option that doesn't need a huge critical mass and isn't completely slow.
All
and
right.
can be split in half without screwing yourself over.
All right. How about you, Eviling?
I also have him in A solid A.
Solid day this time.
He can't solid A. He can't put
Static
out
A.
buildings. Well, he could put buildings out and put a whole bunch of shield batteries and just kind of like hope repair beam and shield batteries keep a building alive. But I would be more inclined to be using P2 or P3 for this. So if you P3 early Void Risk, not gonna be an issue as long as you get the scout out. Past the early Void Risk, then that's where it gets a little more sketchy for him, because he has to find some way to get vision, unless the ally takes care of the vision. Like if he had a Raynor ally, that would be great. But it's definitely doable. That's why if he had a much easier way to get vision of the Void Risk in odd places, he would definitely be S for me.
All right, so both of you had him in A. I actually have him in S, but both of you had him in A, so let's have him in A. Kerrigan, where do we have him?
Kerrigan. I
Evilly.
believe that's
Yes,
yours first.
I
Sorry.
agree.
My bad.
No worries. Kerrigan will be my first S. When she comes out, she closes the rifts, put a bunch of worms all over the place, distract Purifier Beams, distract the trickles, allow your ally to be able to get to cross the map if they don't have the mobility, and yeah, just punch Amon in the face with immobilization wave.
All right, I was about to say, wasn't Abathur your first S, but yeah, it was Sticksbender who put him in S. Anyway, how about you, Sticksbender?
Yes, and also, like, basically we can look at it as, hey, Kerrigan, remember how we were complaining that no one else could just litter the map with buildings and say, good news, everyone, we've camped the rifts. Kerrigan could do that because not only are her buildings free, which wouldn't be enough if Amon was stealing them and causing problems, but the problem is Amon steals them and then doesn't cause
They die.
that many problems because they're just giving him vision and that's it.
Wait, I think they don't
cares?
even. I think they don't even stick around for Amon, do they?
They do.
Oh, they do.
They
All
just stick around and just kind of pose menacingly. Like, they don't do anything. They provide detection, so I guess if your ally is a Vorazun, they will cry at you because Amon has now literally blanketed the map in detection. But on the flip side, so have you, and so Vorazun should be happy, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Kerrigan's ass, she's like insanely good.
All right, no one can put buildings around the map, but Kerrigan S. Raynor, where do we have him?
Raynor, I have him in B. So Raynor is definitely one of those people that will struggle against Void Risks early on, because closing the few, you're gonna have to depend on your call downs to do it, and you're gonna have to get out some early Rax units to kind of just deal with it. And from there, you can focus on your eco while your call downs are clearing what can be done. It's a really frantic pace.
Quite frantic.
His winning attribute, like if you're to pair him with someone who has orbital strikes like Artanis or Karax, then you can provide scan in really odd rift places. They can close it. So he has kind of synergies. His orbital drops are a major thing. So if rifts spawn in a place that's not heavily defended, you can drop a bunch of marines, you can drop a tank, drop spider mines, and close that rift and kind of secure that area. But yeah, definitely B. I could easily be convinced towards C.
What do you think, Sticksbender?
Yeah, I would say he's probably in C. His just overall strength is low unless you're really on top of things. C, he's in C as in basically could he do it? Probably, but it would be really tough. Now, one thing that's nice about Jimmy is that the Hyperion really is just kind of like a board reset because of how it has so many tactical jumps and Yamato one-shots the rifts and everything. Basically, if the rifts are getting out of hand, the Hyperion should still be able to clean all of them up, and it kind of gives you that reset. The problem is Jimmy has a really bad early game. In order to play Jimmy normally, what you usually do is you have like 0 units for the entire first like 10 minutes, and you're just using top bar. That's a lot of void rifts that you're dealing with during that time when you would want to be building 0 units. And if you build units, what happens? Well, then you just don't ramp your economy and you never get going and you just never get off the ground.
Yeah.
So basically, if you're trying to carry this with Jimmy, you're going to be caught in the awkward position of either you don't have enough economy or you die to the first few rifts.
Yes.
And yeah, you're just in trouble.
And
So basically, also the first 2 rifts, like dealing with those is, I am not certain how you do that, literally.
And I know
you
that
can't even just like power build a bunker like Mengsk. You don't have Banshees until the second set of rifts spawns. I'd say he's D, but I don't think he's as bad as D, but he's not good.
And to preempt those comments that Raynor is good at scanning and providing vision to those commanders who can kill the rifts, that would be strictly support, not the carry. That's why we don't consider that as part of carrying, even if you just have infinity scans, because you're not doing the actual work of destroying the enemies. But
Besides,
please,
other people have better options for that.
please do leave those
Mengsk with
comments
his
anyway.
scans.
And you don't have infinity scans at the early game either.
Yeah.
You need those scans as mules instead.
Please leave those comments anyway. I really appreciate them. Anyway,
Now,
so
leave comments talking about how bad scan is.
that
Just
works too.
trash scan.
That works too.
Shame scan for no reason.
Shame scan for no reason. So, are we going B or C? I'm actually slightly more inclined towards B.
Oh no, definitely C.
because
Definitely
you
C.
can do it. You definitely
No,
C?
definitely C.
What do you think,
Definitely
Evelyn?
C.
C is for your average Raynor pub. B is for 2-2 level for Lila level.
Really? For Lila level, I would say
Lila
A.
level, well, I mean, technically, Lila hasn't hosted a solo of this mutation of Raynor,
Hasn't.
which tells you a lot.
Oh, that's the thing. All right then. Let's have him in C. Let's have him in C.
Dun.
Yeah, yeah.
Stukov, where do we have him?
Stukov, slow ramp up time. His only saving grace is P1. It allows you to get Diamondbacks out early and get going. But yeah, I have him in an iffy B, solid C.
What do you think, Sticksbender?
I would say C seems reasonable, to be honest. Basically, Stukov's early game is pretty rough against Void Rifts, but it's not Void Reanimators rough. Like, not nearly as bad as Void Reanimators for Stukov.
Oh, it's
For
not
the simple
D.
reason of he can
can.
just stick down a bunch of, like, a bunker. He can stick down a bunker, have that bunker defend the first 2 rifts until the Apocalypse comes out. He will need to use Infest Structure on the bunker to make the bunker strong enough to not die, but with the help of that, your one bunker can hold
He also
until
defend.
the Apocalypse comes.
He also defend.
Yeah.
I mean repair. He can also repair the bunker.
Yeah, you can also repair, but you're gonna have to repair a lot if you aren't using Infest Structure to provide broodlings to tank.
I agree.
Anyways, basically, yeah, you can defend until the first Apocalypse spawn, so that's basically how you're going to have a semi-stable early game. And then from there, definitely P1, and from there, Diamondbacks are good. Banshees are actually quite good because they're fast, and they can permacloak because they can get back all their energy by just burrowing for a few moments, and they're burrowed while burrowed, so they're cloaked while burrowed. And then they can be a pretty good way to pop Void Rifts around the map. It's still an army-based solution, so it's not amazing, but it is a solution. I would say C tier probably seems reasonable for Stukov. He's going to be a rough time. It's going to be a lot of multitasking, and his early game is not stellar. It's basically he can hang in there until the 4-minute mark, which a lot of people could do that. So
I actually had him in D, but both of you say C, so let's have him in C. I don't see him better than either Raynor or Stetboy, so
I think I'd see him better than Stetman, actually.
better than Stetboy. I don't see him because
But
Stetboy
worse than Jimmy, probably.
at the very least buffs his ally. I don't see Stukov doing anything. Anyway, let's move
I
on.
guess that one wasn't on.
Let's move on. Swann, where do we have him?
Yay, we found someone better. It's Swann. I mean, he's not amazing, but he's pretty good. Pretty good. So Swann, usually wants to be using entirely buildings. Here it gets a little awkward. You can still use floating factories to get vision for a laser drill to do things, and I don't think Amon will land the factories and start using them. I think that as long as they're floating when they die, that you're fine. Otherwise, the factory will turn into a void rift. Basically, it'll just keep spawning units. It'll become a like slow void rift, much slower than the regular void rift, but it'll basically turn into a void rift because thanks, Eminent Domain.
Yes.
So you have that. You have wraiths, which are going to be your core army here,
Yes.
and because you can't really, unless you're baiting the Purifier Beams into a corner, which is an option. If you don't do that, turrets are going to have a rough time. You can build turrets and then just salvage them when the beam comes close, and you should probably rely on turrets to carry your early game first slot at least, and early rifts. You can power build a blaster ability right next to the void rift to deal with it. But your ultimate transition is going to be towards just mass cloak wraith.
Yes.
Mass wraith.
Letter.
Very good. I would say he could probably go somewhere into E.
How about you, Evil Link?
Yes, I have Swann at a solid B. His early game's a little iffy. Definitely, please do not put all your points into gas drones. Get your points into the laser drill so it comes up early when the first rift spawns.
I don't think I've ever said this sentence on my channel through 7 years of it existing, but please don't put any points in gas drones. I think it's the first time I've ever said it. I always just say, I always have it in laser drill build time. I like laser drill build time. But I think this is the first time I've ever said, do not put your points in gas mastery. I think it's a waste of mastery points and power level for your laser drill.
You've implied it many times.
But I never said it directly. This is a momentous occasion. 2023, guys. Yeah. All right. Encroaching madness. Truly encroaching madness. So, I think everyone has him in B. I also have him in B, so let's have him Buon again. There we go, Buon again. Tychus, where do we have him?
Buon again. Tychus, I have an S. But caveat, do not go for Sirius first. Get Sam out first. Closes the wrist fast. And Sirius is going to be a serious liability with his turrets and Eminent Domain.
All right. How about you, Sticksbender?
I believe that the turrets lose Lone Wolf buff when they stop belonging to Sirius, which makes them considerably less scary. Like one turret with Lone Wolf buff would be like 3 turrets without it, maybe even 4 turrets without it. It's a stomp. But that said, it's still problematic. Yes, Sam is a very good first pick for Lone Wolf against Void Rifts. So yeah, just go Lone Wolf. Outlaws running around all over the place and win everything. It should be S tier makes sense for Tychus.
Nice. I had him in A, but both of you guys said S, so let's have him in S. Vorazun, where do we have him?
Oh boy. So she has to use units again, and just has again with the I have units. Do you have anything special going on here? Not really. I have
Time
units.
stop. Hey, Shadow Guard.
Time
hey.
stop is a thing. Time stop is a good alt. Basically, it's I have good alt. Really good alt, actually, since it now spawns a bunch of Shadow Guard. She has an excessively good alt. Congratulations, Vorazun. You have been promoted to the role of alt bot. In all seriousness, you're basically going to just use standard Dark Templar Corsair or Dark Templar Stalker, mostly Dark Templar. Run around the map, popping Void Rifts with those Dark Templar. Time stop is very helpful to get things under control. Time stop is also a giant swarm of Shadow Guards, assuming you have P3 unlocked, which will just basically say, you know how there was a base you needed to clear? It no longer exists.
Nice.
Letter. I would say I'd say she could probably go in B tier again. She's not got anything that's remarkably good, but aside from she doesn't have anything that's remarkably good for the mutation, but she has good stuff, and she's not particularly bad for the mutation, like the C tiers are. So I think she should do okay.
All right. How about you, Eviling?
I have her at a solid B. I could be convinced to A, but time stop is a great thing. Use it. Don't wait for it unless you know intentionally there's a reason to wait for it. Keep in mind when you use it, it's delaying
everything.
Most of the timers on the map, so it allows you to macro up. It allows your ally to macro up. Buying that time is no other commander can do that.
And since Missed Opportunity is a timed map, whenever you use time stop, it delays the next rift spawns by 20 seconds. So you effectively lessen the number of rifts that could possibly spawn if you use it enough times, theoretically.
By 20 seconds, and you keep on using time stop, it becomes 40 seconds, it becomes 60 seconds. So,
eventually, you push out an entire rift spawn until after the map ends, which is incredible. Anyway, where do you have him? B?
I have him solid B. Could be convinced to A, but yeah, sounds like we're converging on B.
I will just make an aside that Ankalagan is so good at Vorazun. My goodness. he used Oracles and Corsairs, and I was frustrated in that game. I was frustrated because I was playing instead of watching him. It was beautiful. He had control groups of Dark Templar ready to snipe rifts whenever they spawned. He was on top of the enemy spawns. He was able to even attack, clear out waves. It was incredible. I was angry that I couldn't get to watch him and had to play stupid Zeratul. I think it was Zeratul. Yeah, I think it was Zeratul.
Speedy air units for the win, man.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you were literally playing with the invincible murder man who had the Vorazun shield making him have plot armor.
Yes. Yeah, let's have him be. Zagara, where do we have him?
Zagara, I have her at B. She has a really good early game, but her problem is mobility, which P3 solves. Deep Tunnel Zagara can really do wonders in closing risks, but that's only one prestige, so her other prestiges will struggle.
Okay, but we're always talking about the best prestige. So if we assume the third prestige, where do we have him?
Yeah, I would say probably A.
Okay, how about you, Sticksbender?
Remarkably, we agree on this. Yeah, A tier because Deep Tunnel on a hero unit is good.
Yeah.
It can teleport without vision. It means that she can just get on top of Void Rifts and tell them no.
She effectively has a Brutalisk.
Yeah.
A Brutalisk,
her
not
army
S.
isn't amazing, and she has a Brutalisk, which has double cooldown on its Deep Tunnel.
That's
but
why-
hey, at least it can.
Exactly.
That's why
At least her double cooldown Brutalisk can kill some stuff around there while she's there.
That's why it's A instead of S.
Yeah.
So let's have Zagara in A. I actually had Zagara in B, but both of you said A, so let's have her in A. Zeratul, where do we have
She's
him?
barely A.
Barely in A.
Yeah. Zeratul. Cannon's good. A, not S. I don't think he's S, partially because Eminent Domain, but Eminent Domain isn't even the real problem. If you select the original cannon that projected the shade and hit cancel, it'll cancel the shade even if Amon has taken over the shade of Eminent Domain.
Yeah.
So you could just delete Amon's shades. It's fine. The big problem is more the fact that, you're kind of, you kind of have to worry about Eminent Domain making it inconvenient to try and use those cannons. You still want to use them, but it's going to slow you down, and rifts are going to be spawning everywhere, and there's waves to deal with, and there's a 2-minute cooldown on those cannon shades.
All right, so you have an A.
He feels like a high A, but I do not see him as being on the level of the S tiers, basically.
How about you, Eviling?
100% agree. I had him at A. He kind of fumbles around the early game because he needs to get his artifacts going, and then it's a lot of investment to get those cannons going. It will pay off because you're able to shade those cannons out and project the cannons out and close the rifts, but it's going to be a lot slower than usual, and for the amount of minerals that you need to invest in it is substantial. So you need to get your economy going, which Zeratul has no major problems doing, but it's still a little fumbly.
All right, so it's unanimous A. All right, so that's our tier list. Do we have anyone in S who's worthy of being a double S?
Nah, no one is that good.
All right. So in S we have Abathur.
Invincible galleons? I don't know about that.
Invincible galleons.
Even considering Invincible Galleons, I still put Kerrigan at the top.
Okay, so you have Kerrigan at top of
Yeah.
S. How about you, Eviling?
With the arguments that we made for Abathur to be S, it would be hard to, because Kerrigan is only one, and she still, in the long run, she won't be able to close rifts as quick as Abathur. So I'm still kind of debating in my head whether it's Kerrigan or Abathur.
Ironically, Abathur wasn't even going to be my second place.
I actually had Abathur top of S.
Oh.
I had my Abathur as top of S because of.
I'll be honest. My ordering looking at this S is Kerrigan and Tychus are very close. I would slightly lean towards Kerrigan, but
Yes.
I could easily be convinced to lean towards Tychus. And then Abathur sitting behind both of them, just behind both of them. I think that actually Kerrigan can close rifts very fast if you're using worms, and she's just going rift pop, worm rift pop. She can definitely close multiple rifts in the 10-second cooldown of Deep Tunnel on Abathur's Brutalisks. Although there's only one of her, and there's multiple Brutalisks, so you can put one Brutalisk on each rift. But yeah, Kerrigan can close rifts quite quickly if you're hopping her in and out of worms efficiently.
Abathur doesn't suck against air.
But
Kerrigan doesn't really suck against air
caveat
that
to-
much anymore since Prestige is it's not as good as against ground when she has to use units. But here, she's mostly relying on her hero unit, not units, so it doesn't actually matter that much. Because basically, since the Prestige patch, her hero unit is fine against air. Her units continue to suck against air.
That's true. I still have Abathur because
The caveat with popping worms where you want, you need vision. Abathur doesn't need vision.
yeah.
True. I mean, you kind of make worm trains to get vision, but
How many Omega networks do you
Fair.
have?
Right.
well, yeah, how many worm networks do you have? As I just said, there's not really any incentive to make units on this mutation, so you just make worms.
You're gonna hero
and
solo it?
queens.
That's
You
insanity.
make worms and queens.
That's insanity. I
Hero
guess
metal
Solo
level
is
worms.
literally the correct option here.
I guess you truly have to stick true to the name, Encroaching Madness, true to the theme. I still prefer Abathur just
You
because.
can make units late game with Kerrigan. Just I don't think you need units before the late game. So yeah, get 12 networks. Go for it. Go crazy.
Go crazy, go madness. Yeah. What do you think? Eviling?
Yeah. In terms of getting vision for Kerrigan, yeah, I get it. Either you pop worms. Hey, you got a lot of overlords just sitting around doing nothing. Get them the speed upgrade and send them out.
That'll work. But I think it's slower than, hey, Brutus, go to
But
this
yeah.
spot I haven't explored yet. Buy Rift.
Exactly. I'm with you, CTG, on Abathur. I agree with Sticks that Kerrigan and Tychus, they kind of give the vibe of, I'm just going to brute force and close these rifts and punch Amon in the face. Abathur is a little more doing a dance to close the rifts, and Han and Horner are in a boat of their own with invincible galleons.
Yes. I can
So-
see Abathur at the top.
Okay, so we have Abathur top. Okay, I'm okay with Kerrigan second best in S, and then Tychus, and Han and Horner. Han and Horner is just happy to be in S.
I
so
completely agree with that.
Han and Horner is just
Yeah.
happy to be in S.
Yep.
A, who's top of A?
Yes, their first S.
Their first S. Two
of
commanders,
A.
one S.
Hooray, they did it. Top of A, Zeratul.
Zeratul? Man, I'm really bad at Zeratul. I caught like 59% of the kills when we played, and he was playing Vorazun. My goodness.
I'd say Zeratul is probably the top of A, and
I thought Karax. I'm thinking Karax personally.
I don't think so on Karax.
Yeah,
Remember, you're not massing
I
cannons,
kind
you're
of
massing
felt
immortals.
Karax or Phoenix.
Sorry, what was that?
I felt either Karax or Phoenix would be top A.
I think Karax because you can still go for the second prestige. You can still go a lot of units, carriers, sentinels, and you can have observers all around the map. It'll kind of be like a brutalist quote unquote of sorts, except you just pre-place your observers where you want the rifts to die, and then just go for a regular army.
And
Although I also see Zeratul. I can
and
also
if the
see
rifts
Zeratul.
are not dying, then you want a tanky army, which Karax and Phoenix has. Definitely a tanky army.
Yeah, I'm more inclined toward Karax, but again, actually, I also see not Zagara. Zagara is really
No,
good
not
because
Zagara.
she's just a brutalisk, not 3. So there we go.
A double cooldown Brutalisk.
Half a brutalisk.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that really shows that that Abathur should be the top of S. Half a Brutalisk got into A tier.
So
Good point. Very good point.
So do we go Zeratul or Phoenix? I can see the points for both.
I'd say Zeratul. I think just like the Karax thing of observers, Zeratul can also just stick
Yes.
observers, but his have way more vision radius, and
His
then he
have
can
way
just
more.
drop cannons on them. Also, he has a very, very mobile hero unit,
And if-
especially with P2.
and if
this
Amon
map is
steals
long,
them.
you can get
And
enough.
very mobile army.
Very mobile army.
Yeah.
I choose to go army here because I was thinking, well, cannons are slow to get up. I would never get any kills on Akalagan if I went for cannons. So I went for yes.
What do you mean? You can hero solo this and get more than half the kills. You can carry this as a hero solo if you just have, something helping you deal with the rift trickle, which is what cannons are for. Like,
So
you
ignore
basically
rifts?
early on, you're just spitting cannons at home to deal with rift trickle and hero soloing, and then later on, as you get more cannons, now when there are faraway rifts, you can just say, "Behold, cannons."
So I ignored the rifts. Anyway,
I
that's...
just came to a realization. I agree with Sticks now that Zeratul should be top of A
Yeah?
because we just mentioned mobility. Kerrigan has that mobility. That's what's putting her in S. So Zeratul has a semi kind of like Omega Wormish with his warp arrays.
Yeah, it's Void Race. All right.
I can say
Yeah.
for certain I have had like 11 artifacts while doing mutations on this map. So if you're with P2, I mean, and so that would mean your Zeratul would have 12 charges of blink.
I think I got 9.
That is in fact enough to blink basically across the entire map.
I got 9 charges of artifacts here because the Void Rifts require a lot of attention.
Fair enough, but still, yeah. Zeratul will have a lot of blinks. Personally, I would do the thing that I often end up doing, which is I go Photon Cannon build, and then I take Void Blink, not the cannon passive, because literally it's actually a Zeratul hero solo will the cannons are supporting.
All right, let's have Zeratul. And
Bypass
then,
everything, blink to it, bye-bye Rift.
and then Karax next? Or Phoenix?
And then Phoenix
Yep.
was next, I thought.
Phoenix?
I
Because...
think.
I said Phoenix.
Well-
CTG said Karax, and then so that's kind of
Alright,
we both agreed
I
Karax would
always-
be up there.
I always
I-
Karax
defer.
and Phoenix is between those two.
I always defer. If you say Phoenix, I'll go with Phoenix. Then Karax
Fair
next.
enough.
And then, is it Dehaka or
Alarak.
Alarak?
Alarak. His death fleet is actually quite effective, honestly.
That's true, that's true.
When I say
Air
like
unit.
8 or 10, when I say it's like 8 or 10 destroyers to be able to just move them at a rift and trust that it'll die, seriously, that's enough destroyers, and you should be able to make more than just 8 or 10 destroyers. You should make a lot of destroyers because they're cheap.
Alright, that's fair. I would say Dehaka is slightly easier because you can just deep tunnel worms. But
Then you're allowed to deal with the worms, and the worms have a long cooldown, whereas the rifts are coming quite frequently, and there's a lot of rifts, whereas you only have a couple of worms. Keep in mind, you can't deep tunnel worms without vision. You can only summon greater primal worms without vision. And if you're
Yes.
using regular primal worms and deep tunneling those, one, you need vision. Two, they don't have timed life, so if you tunnel a bunch of those over and Amon kills them, and now he has a bunch of worms.
He has a
That's
bunch of worms.
Not ideal.
Yes. Alright, so we'll have Alarak next, then Dehaka, then Zagara. Zagara just happened to be an A. Who's
Zagara has half a Brutalisk.
half a Brutalisk? Still got her an A. Who's top of B?
Half the Brutish she used to be.
Oh gosh,
Top
I
of
literally don't know
B.
what to do with B. They're all dramatically different.
Yeah, I can see that. Who feels the
I
most
would say
solid?
Manx is top of B just because drop pods.
Yeah, he can get to the furthest ones without having to worry about going through or over or around defenses. Just go straight to the.
Okay.
All right, Arcturus top of B.
However, counter argument, I could see an argument for Swann in the top of B entirely because his laser drill comes up fast enough with full mastery into laser drill build time. His laser drill comes up fast enough that you can have a laser drill to help you defend the first rifts.
Then we can have him.
And then if you get further enough, you can get vision with a teleporting Herc drop.
All right, we can have him. You can have him second in B. It's not that big of a difference. Arcturus then Swann,
No, it's not.
and then is it Artanis or Nova? I think Artanis should be next because they can also do the observer thing.
Artanis is pretty solid. His army just doesn't scale the way Nova's does, though.
True. That's Nova's argument. Nova scales better.
Nova's got a very strong hero unit too.
I'm ambivalent here. I'm okay with either Nova or Artanis.
I believe they did fix the fact that Nova's defense drones could protect the bots, right?
I don't-
I think they changed. I think they patched that. I'm not certain though.
I don't think they
If
do.
that's not patched, then that's actually like a huge point for Nova. But yeah, it used to be Nova's defense drones could shield the bots on this map. That was good. That was really good. It would just make the bots just like, you know how I was gonna die? Nova said no.
I might put Artanis higher just because he can just delete the first rifts instantly with Orbital
Yeah.
Strike.
Yeah.
What do you think, Eviling? Do you think Nova's higher than Artanis?
Artanis definitely has much more mobility.
More mobility in the air. Wait. More mobility.
Nova lacks.
You think Artanis has more mobility than the Griffin airlift?
I think they have very different mobility. Griffin Airlift is not reliable mobility because that's a whole 2-minute cooldown, and the rift
Yes.
spawn more often than every 2 minutes. No. The mobility Nova
Exactly.
has is that Liberators are fast.
No.
Dragoons and Tempests are compared to Liberators.
Nova's
slow.
mobility is that you suicide her, then you teleport her, then you revive her wherever you want.
There's also that, but doing that, it's like Artanis just summons his next set of units wherever he wants. That's his mobility.
I was
So
kind of
he
joking.
has summon wherever he wants. Nova, however, comes along and just says, no, my Liberators have more movement speed than anything you can build except a Phoenix, and your Phoenixes
Yes.
are not helping here, Artanis.
They're terrible.
Okay, no, Zealots can also be...
Come to think
No,
of
I
it,
think his Zealots... I think if you have charge, your Zealots are still slower than a Liberator. Like, Liberators are fast. I think a lot of people miss that. Liberators
they are
move
fast. They're really fast. Not as fast as a Stetling on Blue Zone, but still fast. So do we have Artanis or Nova? Nova or Artanis? Should we flip a coin?
Glowy eyes.
I'm more inclined. Just very little bit more for Artanis.
Yeah,
Cool.
same.
Glowy eyes.
All
Just
right.
because he can get mobility and or vision
All right.
better than Nova.
Yeah, I think all of us just slightly, ever so slightly favor Artanis. So let's have him there. And then Nova and then Vorazun. Okay, who's the best in C? Raynor?
Yeah. Raynor feels good, and then Stukov.
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of
then Stukov, then Stetboy?
Yeah,
So
that's what I would say.
I would put Stetboy
Stet
over
is gonna be at
Stukov.
dead last.
I would put Stetboy over Stukov just because he can buff his
Yes,
ally.
at least that.
And Stukov.
My argument for putting Stukov over Stetboy is a combination of one, a more like robust army that doesn't have to worry about, and then my army used itself up, and I had to find a way to get a new army over there. Whether it's Timed Life Roaches or it's Banelings, you're gonna have to worry about Statman unless you're using Ultralisks, which, to be fair, I would probably use Ultralisks, but that's besides the point. The other thing
That is not besides the
is
point.
that
Ultras
I would
Ultras are
probably
really
use
good.
Ultralisk, but none of you guys recommended it, so that's besides the point.
I recommended P3, and that's like automatic Ultralist there.
But I don't think that's a good idea either way, because then your Ultralisks are too expensive, so then you're not doing well. I would say P2 Ultralisks. Anyways, okay, fine. I'll expand on that point. The Ultralisk would come relatively late. Your early game is still going to be with like a fragile army that is expendable. You're going to be relying heavily on your hero unit, who is flying and does not get to draw aggro as a result. While meanwhile, Stukov is going to have better static defense options with a bunker that has infest structure on it. He's going to have a more, ground present air unit in the form of the Alexander top bar when he needs it, although unfortunately he's not going to have 100% uptime like the way you have Super Gary 100% uptime. But another final thing that helps, especially early on and especially for sniping far back rifts later on, is that Stukov can make Banshees, which are a fast, invisible, flying unit. It is invisible and flying, and it is fast. This makes it very good at actually getting at rifts if you have the multitasking to do it, whereas Stetman has no such really good unit for doing that. The only option he has is, wow, P2 Gary is so strong, he just strolls through the entire enemy base and doesn't even care.
I agree with all of that except the early game part. How early can you get the Banshees?
Basically you're going to be using P1. Like that's just,
Yeah, that's a given.
So
Yeah.
the first two rift pairs are gonna have to be dealt with by Apocalypse after using a bunker to hold them off.
Yes.
And then you're gonna rush out Banshees, and you're gonna get like a handful of them, and then you're gonna transition into just Diamondbacks, just a big old blob of Diamondbacks.
Yes. All right. Fair. I think since those two guys are at the bottom, we can probably just interchange. Okay, you guys put Stukov ahead of Stetboy. Let's have Stukov ahead of Stetboy. But they're really kind of just at the bottom of the barrel
They're
here.
very similar. They're very similar.
Just use who you prefer using. They're both bad. So this is our tier list. Do we have any synergies of B and C who will be better than an S? I'm trying to think.
Let's see. Not better than S.
Not better than S.
Not better than S.
Yeah.
All right, there we have it, guys. Watch Sticksbender's channel. Evilink doesn't have a channel. I will link it down below, and I will see you guys next time.